Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas. What are you laughing at? Now we've got to bring you in early. And we'll skip the rest of the intro. So yes, this is a continuation, even though it's not listed in the title. Keep the Noahide laws or die. And so this is actually a really good topic for today. Are Jews obligated to actually, are they obligated to teach the Noahide laws as a part of their daily routine? Or tell me how to rephrase the question more accurately, if you don't mind.
The question would be, always a pleasure to be here. And the question would be, isn't it an obligation for Jews, if they're a light into the nations, to teach the Noahide laws, right? Without non-Jews asking for it.
Okay.
That's really the heart of it.
So I need to put this in a scenario. So like if I was to go to a synagogue and I went in there, I should hear them in their teachings on their regular day-to-day life. They should be their day-to-day teachings. They should be teaching Noahide laws.
Or should
offer
they
classes or something? Should
they dedicate any part of their day? In other words, if a person has an obligation to learn, right? If a guy has an obligation to learn, how much of his time, should he dedicate to teaching non-Jews about their laws?
Okay.
Or let's say teaching Jews that don't know anything about Judaism. Maybe my Torah is more important than theirs. Let them find someone else to teach them, right? But that would be different, right? We'll actually discuss that. What the difference is. But that's essentially the question.
Okay, all right, take it away. Let's see what you got.
Okay, so the second part of the question, just to make it a little bit stronger, the question was, if all Jews live in Israel, let's say, but that's not the case, but if all Jews would live in Israel and they don't tell people about the Noahide laws and they only stay in their communities, how are they going to find out? Right, that's really the question. How would non-Jews, find out about the Noahide laws? So you say, well, let's go on the internet, right? Google Noahide, Noahide laws, you find somebody. Right, but the question's a good question because maybe there is an obligation, right? In other words, maybe we should be out there like Chabad. Chabad is very big in teaching non-Jews, certainly about the Noahide laws, right? That's, besides teaching Jews that don't know that much about Judaism. So they also are very big in teaching non-Jews about the Noahide laws. So you see, they're out there, right? They are definitely out there. So you see, there is something, there is something to it. The question is, though, if a Jew has an obligation, if I have an obligation to learn, when I'm not, making a living, right? So you learn in the morning, you learn at night, or whatever the case is. So when you're learning, when a Jew is learning, and you're learning for your own development, right? Certainly you could, learn with someone who knows less than you. You can help them as well. You can learn with someone who's greater than you, the same as you, etc. The whole point of learning, is to get to the truth, right? To decipher, what the Talmud says, what the commentaries say. You go through Chumash, go through Jewish philosophy, Musar, ethics, maybe, at some point, a person learns Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, and all that. So, what about non-Jews, right? How are non-Jews going to find out about this? So let's go through the back door. We'll go, we'll go the other way before we get to non-Jews. What about a Jew, right? A Jew that doesn't know anything about Judaism. Is there an obligation for someone to reach out to them, right? To learn with them, let's say. So there are two things. One idea is there's a mitzvah called V'ahavta l'reacha kamoch, to love your fellow Jew as yourself, right? Normally we don't love anybody more than ourselves. It's kind of hard to do. It's a little bit of a hard mitzvah to do, but in general, there's a mitzvah, right, to reach out to Jews that don't know that much about Judaism, right? And has the status of a Shavas Aveda. What is a Shavas Aveda? Returning a lost object. What are you returning a lost object? You're returning their soul to themselves. In other words, you're reactivating that soul that's been dead for years, right? Potentially dead for years. So there's another thing. So there's one idea about a Shavas Aveda, returning, helping them get back to where they need to get to, returning their soul, so to speak. There's an idea of V'ahavta kamocha, loving your fellow Jew. And there's the third idea. The third idea is Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh. All Jews are intertwined. Now, what does it mean? All Jews are intertwined. Now, by Jews, it doesn't happen by anybody else. We mentioned this before, right? It doesn't mention by any other nation. Imagine, God forbid a Jew does something wrong, right? And he's recognizable as a Jew. Nice yarmulke on his head, black hat, whatever it is, recognizable as a Jew. And this person has cut someone off on the road, or he cut in line, or whatever it was. What's the person going to say? Right? The person's going to say, oh, you Jews like this. You Jews have done that. What do you mean, you Jews? There's one idiot. Right? There's one person who did it. What does it have to do with the rest of the Jewish people? And, the anti-Semites don't care. There are good Jews, bad Jews. They're all bad. Right? They're all bad. Doesn't matter. There might be some nice ones out there. But they wrap everybody together. You don't see that by any other nation. And if Italian cut you off of the road, you're going to say, burn down Italy? Burn down all the cannolis in the world. Forget it. No more spaghetti. No one's going to do that. That doesn't exist in the world, right? Only by Jews. And the reason that is the case is because the Talmud tells us all Jews are intertwined, right? We're all intertwined together. So if one person does the wrong thing, everyone gets blamed. Doesn't matter. He knows better. He doesn't know better. So by Jews, there's a mitzvah to help them. There's definitely a mitzvah to work with them, no matter what they know, right? To help bring them back. That's our goal. We don't want to lose any Jews, right? We want them to be as observant as can be, but 90% of world Jewry today does not know anything, right? The most important question they may ever ask, I always say, is do I put ketchup or mustard on my hot dog? That is where people are holding. Most Jews are not interested. I was texting someone earlier, I was saying that when a Jew goes to Hebrew school, after a conservative Reformed Jew, to learn for their bar mitzvah, etc., they go to Hebrew school. They go for a couple hours, let's say a few times a week, and they get to a few years before the bar mitzvah, and then they get to the final day, the bar mitzvah. They read for the Torah, whatever they do. They have a big party. That's it. Right, their Jewish education pretty much at that time is over. So there's a joke. It's not really so funny, but there are some Jews out there that are only going to use their Hebrew name 4 times in their life: when they're born, when they're bar mitzvah, when they get married, and when they die. Right. Otherwise, Jewish education really, for most people, goes out the window. But I have an obligation to try and bring them closer. Right. That a Jew's a Jew. Now, a non-Jew is not a Jew. Right? Even if they want to be Jews, they're not going to convert, right? Nonetheless, they're not Jews. If they're not Jews, right, this is the question on the floor, and that is, do I have an obligation? Do Jews have an obligation as part of their learning to find non-Jews who don't believe in idolatry, want to keep the Noahide laws, right? And it's my obligation to go out and find them. Now, I've been accused, a number of times, by proselytizing the non-Jews, right? I put up a course, I'll give it a plug. It's called Discovery of Biblical Path. If someone comes out of Christianity, do they decide to stay a Noahide, to be a Noahide, or to convert? What does it mean to be a Noahide? What does it mean to be a Jew? How do you find a rabbi, a community, all these different things. So, put out ads for it, different things. So they say, hey, you're proselytizing. You're not allowed to proselytize to non-Jews. I said, you're right. I said, I'm giving information. This is information. They want to go one way. They want to go the other way. That's their choice. It's not my choice. I'm not telling them which way to go. If they want to convert, okay, let's see. Let's see if they meet the criteria. If they don't want to convert, like someone said, I want to eat shrimp, okay, right? So you don't have to convert, but you have to know what's out there, right? You have to know what's available, what the options are. Now, if I would go out there, knocking on doors, going to churches, trying to convince people to keep the Noahide laws, that's proselytization, right? That 100% would be forbidden. So now the question is there any obligation for a Jew to help a non-Jew in their mitzvahs? Now, you have to remember, a non-Jew is obligated, we mentioned this a number of times as well, that a non-Jew is obligated to keep that which is obvious according to the Torah. Not everything is obvious according to the Torah, but many things are. right? There are 65 mitzvahs, 70 mitzvahs, depending on, who you go like. It's not, so straightforward, right? There are certain details, no question about it. At the end of the day, though, a lot of it should seem obvious. Many things we mentioned could be that they're not obligated, but it's a moral imperative, right? Speaking Lashon Hara, they wouldn't be obligated in it necessarily, speaking badly against others, but most people would probably agree it's not a good thing, right? It's not a good thing for one person to speak about someone else, even though it's the way of the world. So now, with all that, if I have an opportunity, to learn, part of the day, etc., or I have other free time, should that free time be spent, helping Jews don't know anything, or, doing chesed, or let's just say it's learning. You have an opportunity to learn, right? You learn by yourself. You give a certain amount of time to charity, right? To tzedakah, meaning, if somebody, my Rebbe tells a story that when he was a yeshiva student by Moshe Schneider of blessed memory in England, so they had a thing called Avodas HaKodesh. Avodas HaKodesh means holy service. What was the holy service? The holy service was the yeshiva students, since they don't make any money, they're sitting and learning all day, right? So they really can't give charity. So what do they do for charity? So what they did is you had older students twice a week, right, for an hour. They would help younger students who had questions, right? They had questions in learning. They would dedicate an hour a few times a week. They would dedicate time in order to help younger students, right, who might have been having, difficulty or whatever. So what did that do? First of all, they had to know the material very well. In order to give it over to someone else, you obviously have to know it well, because if you don't know it well, then there's going to be a lot of confusion. But that certainly helps their learning, as well. Teaches them how to be a mentor, right? As well, there are a lot of good qualities here, that it does, but it's also about giving charity. Charity doesn't necessarily mean with money. Charity can mean helping somebody, with something or whatever. It could be chesed, it could be charity, etc. So in that sense, since they're not making money, right? So what do? They helped others, right? They helped others in their learning. Good. So over here, drawing a Jew closer to Judaism, it's a big mitzvah. You're giving them back their soul. So then someone's going to say, but what about a non-Jew? Isn't there an obligation to help a non-Jew? Why should it be that the non-Jew has to seek out the Jew, right? As it's brought down, right, that a non-Jew is going to grab on the senses of a Jew and say, teach me Torah. Teach me what it means to be a Jew, right? Certainly in the Messianic era. I should go out of my way, right? I should go out of my way to teach them. First of all, a lot of these things should be obvious, right? Definitely should be obvious, right? But there are other issues. There are a number of issues that my Rebbe brings down that is highly problematic. So he brings down one of the longest responsive that he has in he's got 8 volumes of all kinds of different questions about, about the holidays, about conversion, about marriage, divorce, you name it. As he once told me, he said, there hasn't been a question that you haven't thought of, that I haven't thought of first and written about it. So he said, basically, any question you have, before you ask it, look at my books. Don't just, have the books on your shelf and it looks very nice. Don't forget every 30 days, dust them off a little bit, So, a few times I've had these way out crazy questions. And I said, before I ask him and get screamed at, let me see if he brings it down. There it is. There it is, black and white. So I came in one day all excited. So he said, let me guess. He said, you had this crazy question, and you found it in my book, and you actually used it. I said, how'd you know? I said, how'd the rough know? He goes, I know these things. Just whatever. It's a big laugh. But anyway, so, certain things that are obvious, right? Obvious, you don't necessarily need someone to teach you about. But there are other issues, right? One issue is if I have an obligation to learn Torah, right? When I'm not busy trying to make money. So if I have an obligation to learn Torah, who says that part of that obligation is to teach a non-Jew, right? Maybe my obligation is just to learn, right? You're learning with someone else, whatever it is, however a person's learning, even if they learn on their own. Maybe that's my obligation out my own growth. Who says I have to work with a non-Jew, right? And I have to work with him. So my Rebbe says you don't see anywhere, not in the early commentaries, not in the later commentaries of the Talmud. You don't see in the Jerusalem Talmud. You don't see in the Midrash. You don't see anywhere, right? I don't take his word for it, right? Because he knows everything, right? So he says there's no source. There's zero source that a Jew should have an obligation to teach a non-Jew, right? That's the first thing. Second thing is maybe there's something else going on. What else could be going on? Where's this non-Jew coming from, right? Most likely, as I've certainly seen by students for conversion, 95%, or it's probably higher, probably like 97, 98%, of most people I come in contact with have come out of the church, right? They felt that the church lied to them, all kinds of mistakes, inaccuracies, this, that. They come out of the church and they want to go through conversion, or they don't want to go through conversion, whatever the case is. So now, one of his arguments is if they're coming out of the church, most Jews, even if they've been learning, all their lives or most of their lives, or they're finding time every day to learn, whatever it is, most Jews do not know that much about Christianity, right? Very little. So therefore, what there is a concern that you're going to get these philosophical discussions, you're not going to know what to answer, and that's not going to be good for you. Why isn't it going to be good for you? You can always pass the buck and say, wow, it's a good question. I'm not really sure. A lot of people don't necessarily spend a lot of time while they're learning Jewish philosophy. Now, I don't necessarily want to go into that. That's a whole thing in of itself, but I'll just say that, a Jew, when they learn, you got to learn all facets of Judaism at some level, right? The main thing is go through the entire Talmud. That can take a lifetime. Certainly take a lifetime, right? Going through Jewish law can also take a long time. You got Chumash, going through the 5 books of the Bible. You have the prophets, you have Jewish philosophy, you have Musar. So in most yeshivas today, 20 minutes, half an hour, they learn Musar, right? They learn ethics. Why is ethics pretty crucial today? Because you have to know that you have to be better. You have to know that what we're doing, as much as we're doing, we're not fulfilling, a quarter of what we should be doing, right? In other words, it's there to make you feel like a piece of dirt in the sense where I'm not going to be fully broken, because if I would, you could say, look at how much you have to learn. Look at how much you have to know. And what happens at the end of your life? You didn't really accomplish that much. You didn't really, get through that much. So I heard everyone say, in the name of the Belzer Rebbe of blessed memory, that the Belzer Rebbe said that imagine a person gets upstairs after 120 years. The Jew gets upstairs after 120 years, and God says, okay, I'm going to give you the ultimate test. Right? What's the ultimate test? Right? God's going to judge you for what you did, etc. Were you honest in business? And then God's going to give you the ultimate test. The ultimate test is, okay, let's see what you learned. Right? Let's see what you learned, over your 70 years, over your 80 years. You say, okay, tractate brachos, right? Speak. Let's see what you learned. Right? So, okay, thank God your soul can remember, even if you don't necessarily remember. Your soul will remember, and record what you learned. Whether you learned it good, you learned it bad, it'll be there. So let's say you learned, let's say 4 or 5 pages, right? Maybe 10 pages, that'll be nice. Let's say, okay, you learned 10 pages of brachos. Great. Right? Next tractate, Shabbos, right? You go through the laws of Shabbos. Great. It's 150 more, pages. How much did you learn there? 15. Okay. You got 15 out of 150, 10%. Eruvin, 2 pages. Right? What about menachos? All about sacrifices. Page and a half. Right? So you're going through this ultimate test, says the Belzer Rebbe. If you start something, you should finish it. Right? However long it takes, you want to have some level of completion. It doesn't mean just read it and you have no understanding. Right? But you want to have some level of completion. Why not? Why is that? Because you get upstairs, you're going to get the ultimate test. You're going to look like a leopard. comes tractate blessings, it's got a huge hole, pock marks, right? You got to have this fork, like making pock marks all over your soul. Ervin, you got a few pages there, pock, right? You got Baba Kama, about the laws of damage. Okay, maybe you learned a little bit more about that. So, okay, you'll have less pock marks, right? But in the end, you look like a leopard. There's no wholeness. There's no completeness, right? So there's a ton. There's a ton to learn at many different levels, right? Doesn't King David say, right, that the Torah itself is as vast as the mountains, as wide as the seas, and all that. So you're going to say, so what's the point? I'm never going to get to everything, but you have to try. You have an obligation. You have to have goals, right? You have to set goals to get somewhere. You can't just, going to sit and learn however long without having any goals. You're not going to get anywhere. So, you have to have fixed amount of time. You want to say, okay, I want to learn this now. I want to learn this, another time. I will mention one thing, not to get off topic here, right? That I know somebody many years ago that they learn with somebody once a week for 15 minutes. Once a week for 15 minutes. And they learn Mussar, right? They learn books of ethics, right? So over the years, what did they go through? They went through Path of the Just by the Ramcha, by Moshe Chaim Coffman, a blessed memory. They went through Gate to Repentance by Rabbeinu Yonah. They went through Ways of the Righteous. So you're going to say, how much could you accomplish in 15 minutes? Once a week. I'm not saying every day, right? Once a week. So you see over time, right, that you are going to get somewhere because you have to have consistency. So if you have consistency, you review a little bit, you go a little bit further, cover a little bit more, cover a little bit more. Over time, it could take you a year. It could take you a year and a half, right? But when you've gone through it, you've gone through it properly. I finished it, right? But again, so the Torah is very vast, right? You got the entire Talmud, you got the Code of Jewish Law, you got Midrash, you got all these things, that you yourself have to learn. So now, if you want to do charity, right, you want to learn with someone else. So why would I choose necessarily, no offense to any non-Jews listening, why would I choose a non-Jew, right? There are plenty of Jews, maybe want to learn 1 hour a week, right? Or, whatever it is, to learn about Judaism, try and bring them back, right? Why is that not a greater mitzvah? It should be a greater mitzvah, right? But the problem is, as we mentioned, someone's going to say, but how are we going to know? How are we going to know these laws? Why do we have to come to you? Right? So I just flipped the script, right? I just said, why do we have to come to you? Right? If you're so interested, you'll find someone to teach you, right? In general, that's the way it works. The Talmud says if a person wants to go in the right direction, God is going to help them, right? God is certainly going to help them. You want to go in the wrong direction? Okay. God is not going to stop you. So if someone desires that, I don't have to be out there, going to every nook and cranny of every place and say, hey, any non-Jews want to learn? Want to learn about the Noahide laws? Sorry, I'm a Christian. Okay. Sorry, I'm a Hindu. Okay. Okay, I'll make better videos. I won't even scream, right? We'll make better videos. We'll blast it out there. We'll do all kinds of marketing, Facebook ads, Google ads, pay-per-click. We'll do all these things, to bring non-Jews out. Why would we do that, right? In general. Now, the idea, though, is that, yeah, they should be taught, 100%. But one thing that my Rebbe is concerned about, which I mentioned, is the fact they're coming out of Christianity, most of them, right? So if they're coming out of Christianity or whatever type of religion, so they may ask all kinds of questions. Hey, coming, let's say they're a Hindu, right? They're asking about karma. There's such a thing as karma in Judaism. You don't have any idea what they're talking about, right? So maybe you say, oh, maybe I should read up about it. Right? Maybe I should learn about it so then I can be able to answer. Well, the Rambam did that, right? The Rambam did that in the Guide for the Perplexed, right? It's an extremely difficult book to go through. Certainly, it was written in Arabic, translated into Hebrew, right? Philosophical language, translated from Hebrew into English. Now, why did the Rambam write his book? Because many Jews, thousands of Jews, were going astray by going after the philosophy of Aristotle, the philosophy of Plato, etc. So he answered up all these questions. And some people burned his books. Why they burned his books? Because they thought he was a heretic, going through all these different things to answer Aristotle and others in order to say what Judaism's position is. Now, would that mean if I didn't have an answer about karma, and what karma is. Well, it's very easy to say. You can Google it, and see whatever. Do I have to read up on it in order to answer somebody, right? Do I have to put myself in the dirt? Let's say better. Do I have to put myself in the dirt in order to answer someone? So there's a whole question here, right? There's a whole question. So everybody says that's a problem, right? Because you're going to get in these discussions, potentially. You'll get in these discussions. What's going to happen? He's going to throw things out there you never really thought of, right? It's probably not, not something you would have thought of in general. And then you're going to have to try and answer or, try and wrap your head around it. And there can be a lot of confusion. And if there's a lot of confusion and you find, well, maybe Judaism doesn't have, a good answer or whatever, then it puts doubts in your mind, right? So something like that, maybe someone is going to be more leery, to want to work with a non-Jew, for that reason. Now, someone could say, you know what, this non-Jew coming out of Christianity, let's just say he's coming out of Christianity, not interested in speaking about Christianity, right? He's come out of it. He understands it's false, right? He may ask, okay, we learned these verses, it means like this and like this, in Isaiah and, in Ezekiel, what do the rabbis teach? Okay, right? That's probably a pretty innocuous thing, right? Because if you're going through Tanakh and analyzing verses and different things, you're on your turf. This person can say, well, the Christians claim, talking about JC. Yeah, but he wasn't around then, right? Or 600 years later, or, whatever. As we always say, it's all in context. So you got to look at it in the context. But there is a concern, right? That is definitely a concern. But someone could say, you know what? After the fact, what could happen is that you tell this non-Jew, listen, I'm not dealing with philosophical questions, right? That's not what I'm good at. That's not what I'm interested in. So therefore, you want those type of answers, I'm not the address. You want to learn, you want to learn Chumash, with Rashi, with the Ramban, you want to learn Talmud, great, right? These philosophical things, I'm not interested in. But it's a concern, right? That would alleviate probably that part of the question. So the real crux of the issue is the fact that if it doesn't say anywhere that there's an obligation to do it, you can say, well, I'll do it as an act of chesed. I'll do it as an act of loving kindness, right? An act of charity. But the problem is, who says that I have to, right? I don't have what he's pointing out over here is there's no obligation, right? Because the second part of the question was, wow, if all Jews live in Israel or all Jews live in their own communities and they're not reaching out, then how am I supposed to know? Right? So that's why they have Jewish learning centers all over the place, right? Especially Chabad. They go to all these places where, there are some Jews, right? In order to teach them. Now, they're not necessarily interested in teaching non-Jews. They will, right? They, certainly the Noahide laws, etc. But they're all over the place to find other Jews. Why would somebody go like there are no Jews around? Let's just make it easy. You go to the Bible Belt, no Jews, right? You go to the mountain somewhere, absolutely no Jews. Say, okay, non-Jews, I'm here. I'm here for you to teach you the gospel of the Jews, right? It's called the Torah, right? Do advertising, all these things. You're in the middle of nowhere, no Jews around. But who's to say I have to do that, right? So you're going to say, wow, come on, you're exaggerating. You're putting yourself in a different place and all this. Okay, right? Yeah, it is a little bit of an exaggeration. The point is, should I stop learning for myself, and teach non-Jews? But a non-Jew is going to have a good claim, right? The claim is, well, it'll be one good claim, one bad claim. The good claim is that, they shouldn't have to be looking for us, right? That is a claim, right? Not necessarily such a bad claim. They should be able to find people to do it. Problem is, we're not allowed to proselytize, right? So everyone said, whatever, we got this question about proselytizing or whatever. And, so I asked them many years ago, am I allowed to advertise for what I do? right? Am I allowed to tell people what I do? So some people say it's proselytization. You're not allowed to do that. We'll let them find you however they find you. You're not allowed to look for people. And the answer is I'm not. I put something up, they come to me. Okay. But I asked them, am I allowed to advertise what I do? And so my Rebbe said, don't worry about it. What you do is nothing. I'm like, no, it's not nothing. He's like, no, I didn't mean nothing. But what you're not out there to convert people, which is true, right? I'm out there to give information. If people want the information, fine. If they don't want the information, that's their choice. If someone comes to me, it's one thing, right? But they can choose or not to choose. So if that is the case, then if somebody really wants to find it, they will. What should we do? Should we put flyers in every church? Should we go on on light poles, and hang up flyers so people can see them, etc. How far should we go? Because, the second part of the question, which is the bad part of the question here, is if we stay in our own communities, how are they going to find it? They're going to find it anyway. Whether we're out there or not, they are definitely going to find it because there's a ton of information, right? If you want to find it. Now, there are people that, can be misled also, right? I've heard people, looking for Hebrew classes online. They find out the people teaching them are Messianic, right? So you got to be careful. Certainly have to be careful where the information comes from. But, but that being the case, I don't have to worry that I have to be out there, worrying about non-Jews that, I should be out there telling them and be all over the place. If they want the information, they're going to find it one way or another, right? They go to Rabbi Dr. Google, right? They put something in Judaism or whatever, and, they'll find it. Eventually they'll find it one way or another. Because some people actually find out that, that there's such a thing as Jews and whatever. And they say, it's too bad I wasn't born that way. If I wasn't born that way, I can't convert, right? Some people have this misnomer. So again, you got to dig a little bit deeper. You have to see, you have to ask, get into different groups. That's how you do it, right? It's trial and error. But someone is going to get there. You're going to get the information. The question is, why is it my achrayus? Why is it my responsibility that I have to go out to the non-Jews? I have an obligation to learn for myself, right? God is going to take me to task if I don't learn to my capability, which, maybe everyone's not going to be able to learn according to the capability. Doesn't matter. You have to put your best foot forward. So fine, if I'm going to put my best foot forward, I'm doing it for myself. I'm doing it for other Jews. For non-Jews, let them find the information themselves. These are things, again, most things are obvious. They're 100% obvious. If they're obvious, you don't necessarily need me. But but why do you need someone to teach you? You need someone to teach you because, it is complicated, right? It is not, it's not so cut and dry, even though it is obvious. So going out there, and there are a lot of things that are out on the internet that people can certainly find, right? And therefore, if these people know what they're doing, very good. But we're not interested at all, and there's no obligation anywhere telling me I have to go out there and find non-Jews to educate, right? They have to be the ones interested. Now, when you look at the bigger scheme of things, you have billions of Christians, Muslims and Hindus and all that. They're not looking for us. They're not looking. I wouldn't say they're not looking for truth. They think they have the truth, okay, right? But they're not looking. Why in the world do I have to find them? It's hard enough finding Jews.
Let me spin it.
Between Jews and non-Jews, right? It's hard enough.
Rabbi, I want to spin it a different way, just a little bit.
Why?
Rabbi.
What?
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to put a little different curve on it, wouldn't it be just as beneficial or just as correct if it would be that every synagogue did some private teachings or had classes available pre-prepared for non-Jews, so that way they don't have to stop what they're doing. They say, just like Chabad.org. I love Chabad.org. They've got all these areas you can go to for different types of teachings on the Tanya, on everything.
Right.
So why not have, now that we know that the Noahide thing is such a new thing in a sense of exposure and droves of people coming out, it seems like it would be good for every synagogue to start doing teachings, and just even if they're just online teachings.
So I'll tell you like this: if they come to synagogues and they come to the rabbi and say, "Listen, we don't want to convert. We're not interested in conversion.
They get turned away.
We want to know what we have to do." Now, what would the rabbi do? He'll put you in the right direction. If he doesn't know, he'll get someone who knows and put them in the right direction. Right? Is that rabbi necessarily going to want to learn with non-Jews if they're not learning for the sake of conversion?
Right.
Probably not.
That's a good point.
Right? Probably not. In other words, you have this problem, and I mean, we're working trying to do something about it. It's not so easy. And that is that you have non-Jews who show up. Let's say, they show up at the synagogue and they want to come to a class, but they're not interested in conversion. Right? What are most Orthodox rabbis going to say? Well, what are you doing here? They said, well, I want to learn from the Jewish people. They said, great. So why don't you convert? I said, I don't want to convert. I don't have an obligation to convert, or, I can't convert, or whatever the case is. So that rabbi does not want, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I do see where it could happen. And that is that you could have a lot of people coming, and now you got people coming to synagogue and there are a lot of non-Jews there. And now you get a lot of non-Jews mixing with Jews. You're going to say, okay, it's no big deal. They have their own thing. How many places in the world, in general, are suitable in order, even within one synagogue, are suitable to be able to deal with non-Jews, not for the sake of conversion. For the sake of, I'll tell you this, for the sake of conversion, no offense, anyone who wants to convert, synagogues are not looking for you. They are definitely not looking for you. They don't want to deal with you in general, because they just don't. There are so many issues in general with converts and false converts and, all kinds of things. They just don't want to deal with it, in general, because there are hundreds and thousands of Jews that don't know anything. But if someone's coming and say, listen, I want to learn, why isn't somebody helping me? Right? Okay. That I hear, but not everyone is equipped to do it. You can say, yeah, go to Chabad.org. They have a lot of good stuff there, right? You go to H.com. You can go to Or Samech's website. There's a lot of good information. Good information is not the same as having someone to answer your questions. I get questions all the time. I think of more basic questions that, I think, a lot of people could answer. Some of them are more complex, right? But why are people asking? Because they're not sure. They don't know. Right. So, in a normal, I would say a normal rabbi, not me, because I'm not normal. Right. But a normal rabbi is not going to want to deal with this. Right. Now, I'm not saying that's right, per se. But if you take a rabbi in a main, let's say in a main city, and there's a big Jewish population, he's busy day and night. He's busy day and night dealing with Jews, weddings, funerals, learning, prayer, all kinds of things. Right? Busy day and night. You're on call 24/7, right? Even on Shabbos, you're on call. So, non-Jews coming, yeah, I guess in theory you can say, yeah, here's a lot of material, scram. I don't have time. So what's that going to do for them? You could send them to different websites. That's very good, right? But what they need is like what secular Jews need as well. What they have is, something like Partners in Torah. What is Partners in Torah? Partners in Torah is one-on-one for an hour a week or half an hour a week. I've done it. I did it for many, many years. Other organizations have a similar thing, right? Somebody wants to, they make a pair between a mentor, and a student. What's the student looking for? They want someone that, way out, Jewish history, Jewish world. And, Coffman, he's the one. Okay, we'll put you together, right? They see if it works, it doesn't work. If whatever the case is, they're going to match you up. They don't have anything like that for non-Jews, right? Maybe they should, right? But they're not enough. The problem is there are not enough qualified people out there, right? That's for sure. And I see it a lot. That I see what the non-qualified people put out there, and God should have mercy on all of us. It's just one bit. If I thought the world of conversion was bad, Noahide's 10 times worse. 10 times worse. Because there are many, many people out there don't know anything about what they're doing and what they're teaching them. It's a lot more confusing, for the person. So, if it's I say like this, if it's in a main city or where there are a lot of Jews, the rabbi's not going to have time. He's busy dealing with Jews. So you could blow them off in a certain way and say, okay, go to Chabad.org, go to, give them a whole list of things and say, very nice. Now, what if they want to start coming to classes? You're giving a class in Chumash, right? You're giving a class in the 5 books of Moses or the prophets. They say, can I come? So you're not necessarily teaching oral law. So that wouldn't necessarily be forbidden. So if you're not teaching about oral law in general, unless someone, asks the question, etc. So if you're not teaching oral law, that necessarily shouldn't be an issue, right? But it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. Why is it going to be uncomfortable? Because it's a Jewish place. It's not a non-Jewish place. That's why Ray Peterson and Noahide Nations is working on training non-Jews to teach non-Jews, right? To have, rabbis over them, right? But to teach them what to answer and what to teach, what to be able to teach to non-Jews. I mean, synagogues are overwhelmed. And if you bring all these people into synagogues, I'm not saying it's going to be tens of thousands, right? But, there are going to be people that want to come. I think people are going to feel uncomfortable. It depends on the philosophical outlook, of the synagogue itself. But I can tell you in many mainstream places, etc. And, I was in a mainstream place in, New Jersey a number of years ago. And one of my goals, it didn't happen, but one of my goals was to have a whole bunch of, potential converts move into the neighborhood, help them, establish them, etc. And one of the rabbis of the community said, it's a great idea. I back you in it, but I can't do it publicly. So you're going to say, why can't you do it publicly? Because people don't want it. They don't, non-Jews will want to convert, you help them, this, that. They don't want all these non-Jews moving in. They don't want the influence. They don't want, whatever they're going to bring with them. Now you're going to say that's racist and that's bad, and that's a terrible thing, which gets into a much bigger topic. That's why I'm on the hot seat. Hey, it's getting hot in here, but the thing is that that's why it's so hard to convert, because we don't want all these non-Jews coming to us, right? We want to make it that only the cream of the crop come in, right? And they're going to show 100% that they are the real deal. We don't want any, Tom, Dick, and Harry just using us because we're generous and all that. I had somebody once tell me, I don't want to get too far off topic, was disabled, wanted to move to the Jewish community. And he said, I'm really serious. I got references and the Jewish people should help me. Well, we got enough, charity cases. We got plenty of charity cases, charity cases by the Jewish people. For, if we do this and help somebody, he's going to tell his friend and say, hey, they helped me with this, whatever. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen, but why is that our responsibility, right? It's not our responsibility. This guy cursed me, sent me a bunch of nasty emails, this, that, says God's going to judge you. I said, yeah, he's going to judge me, right? But I precedent, something that my Rabbi told me, whatever. And, one of the things is you have to show you can live in a Jewish community. That we don't want people sponging off of us. We got plenty of Jews doing that. We got enough problems, as it is. But this is a major, major catch-22, right? How far do you let it go, right? So you have a place in Humble, Texas. You have, give a shout out to Rod Bryant, right? So he's got his own thing out there, right? 30 families, 40 families, it's going to growing. Nativ's got a few other places. One in Calgary, the place in South Africa, I think. Whatever, talking about, making more places. So, there is something to that, no question, that in a lot of places this should happen. It's not an easy thing because Noahide is spread all over the world, right? And it's spread all over America, not all in one place, right? Or, in certain places. So it makes it a lot more difficult. But yeah, let's say, you had a handful of people come. They come to this rabbi and say, okay, we're here ready to learn. What are they going to do with them? What in the world are they going to do with them? You're going to say, give him a bunch of pamphlets and send him on his way. Give him a bunch of websites. You can't do that. I mean, it's a good thing to do, but that's the only beginning, right? That's the only beginning because these people, just like converts, no different. They need proper direction. They're going to have a million questions, and I guarantee you these type of rabbis are not going to answer. They're not going to have time to answer. Or maybe they won't have the answers. It's not their, it's not their specialty. Chabad is better at that. I think, because they deal with people in all walks of life, makes more sense. What I do is totally off the charts. It's, I deal with more non-Jews than Jews. It's kind of, the opposite, the way it should be. Right. But, in theory, that is a good thing if there be more rabbis out there that be a little bit more open and know how to deal with them. But again, you don't want the floodgates coming as well. They're going to say, well, it's not going to be the floodgates. It's only going to be, so many people. How many Noahides are out there? You're right. Right. Even so, I could definitely understand if you're going to tell me by converts and they're Jews in training in my language, and they're not necessarily going to be interested, in helping them so far because they don't know if they're real or not real. I know somebody that a Jewish school took their kids in before conversion. The kids had no play dates, until after they converted. Right. Again, parents are leery. They don't necessarily want their kids playing with non-Jews. They may think they're getting good values and all this and all that, but they don't know. They don't know, and they're careful who their kids hang out with. It was easier afterwards, after the fact, right? There's an issue also that there are schools that will not take non-Jewish kids, even in the process of conversion. Some will, some won't.
I would like to chime in there just for a second. Yeah. Because I know it's kind of hard playing jump rope with you because you're like, you don't breathe. You just like keep talking. So just to kind of put this in perspective a little bit, maybe for some others out there. Because some people will say, well, that seems kind of racist, whatever the case may be. But realistically, if you think about it, if for the parents out there who homeschool their kids, doesn't matter what your faith is. I mean, they homeschool their kids because they don't want their kids being influenced by the others at school. So there is no racism there. It's purely a value situation. So.
No, 100%. But with converts, we have to understand less than 20% actually finish the process, even if they're accepted by a rabbinical court, and a lot of them flake out, as well. So, you're right that when people are homeschooled, 100%, they don't want, they definitely don't want the, they don't want the influences, and all that, but, there is precedent for the fact of, there have been times where non-Jews have tried to infiltrate, the Jewish community through conversion, right? By going through conversion, it's happened a number of times. So anyone who wants to convert, we're leery anyway. Why would anyone want to do it? I mean, it's hard enough for a Jew to want to become an Orthodox Jew. Never mind, a non-Jew wanting, to convert. But this is a serious issue. Not to mention the fact, different levels of what non-Jews want to do and all that, but where are they going to go? Right? Where in the world are they going to go? So the obvious place where they should go is to a synagogue, right? Is to an Orthodox synagogue. The question is, what do you do with them? How far do you take them? What do you learn with them? Do you incorporate them in other classes that, you're not going to have an issue with Jewish law, with, with oral law? Right. Or something like that, it's walking a tightrope, in a certain way, because, what are most rabbis going to say? Wow, if you really want to learn, you're so interested, so why don't you convert? That's what they're going to say. Right. That's what they're going to say. So we don't necessarily have to go out to them. They should find us. Right. If you're in a place, I get contacted a lot, people in the middle of nowhere, like really in the middle of nowhere, Afghanistan, whatever, different places. I get someone, I don't know, someone in, Bahrain, someone in, I would say the United Arab Emirates, but now, a lot of Jews there also, and bar mitzvahs and weddings there, all kinds of things. But, there are no Jewish communities there. I had somebody asked me in Pakistan, where's the nearest Jewish community if they ever got out of Pakistan? So I think India, right? But they don't do conversions in India, right? You live in India, you got to move. Somehow you have to get out of Dodge and you have to move. But the idea is that non-Jews are going to find out. They are definitely going to find out whether I advertise or not. It's pretty amazing. I always say, someone says, I found your website. I said, how'd you do that? That's not even on the top of Google, right? Maybe, page 10, I got to work on that, but whatever, people will find it if they need to. There's a ton of information. So back to what we originally said, it doesn't mean I have to go out there in every community, right? I do think there should be good information out there. There should be credible people knowing what they're doing to actually do it, right? Instead of a hodgepodge of what a lot of it, unfortunately, looks like, and that again is a whole topic, in a whole topic, in of itself. Us being a light. Let's make clear also one other point here, because I see I got about at least 40 minutes. So one other point, is the fact that, the question was, you're light into the nation, right? We are an Am Kadosh. We are a holy nation. But if we're not acting like a holy nation, right, in general, if we're not acting like a holy nation, then yeah, it's going to be a lot more difficult. It's going to be a lot more difficult for non-Jews to find us, right, to understand what they need to do. Why do I bring that out? Because people ask the question, in order to be a Jew, the rabbinical court says you have to live within walking distance of an Orthodox synagogue. So someone's going to cop an attitude and say, hey, it doesn't say anywhere in the Talmud. Doesn't say anywhere, in the earlier commentators, later commentators. Doesn't bring it down anywhere. Not in the code of Jewish law, nowhere. So why do I have to do that? So it comes on the Rambam. The Rambam says 24 things that stop a person from proper repentance to separate themselves from the community. So you're right. It doesn't say you have to live in a community, right? But how are you going to learn how to be a Jew if you don't live in a community? So what about, 300, 400, 500 years ago, right? That maybe wasn't on the books, right? Like it is today. So what changed? Because we're in a different level, right? Every generation is a weaker generation. These were much greater generations. A non-Jew, if they would hang out with Jews, and it was a lot easier to find where the Jews are because they stayed in ghettos, right? It wasn't too hard to find out where they were. They weren't all interdispersed as we are today. So finding them, hanging out with them in general, wanting to be like them, they could learn things by osmosis. It was a lot easier to understand and fathom things than it is today, right? It's a different world. Right? It's a whole different world. So if it's a whole different world today, you need that more than anything else, right? But you're not going to learn it by osmosis. So the point is, since we're a very weak generation, being a very weak generation, we're not really alike to the nations, are we? We're not really doing what we should be doing, even though it is the greatest generation. I shouldn't say greatest. It's the generation where more Torah is being learned than in the time of the Second Temple. Let's think about that. That's pretty unbelievable. The quality is not even close, right? The quality is not even close. So we're getting battered and butchered, not necessarily physically, spiritually, sometimes physically as well, right? All over the place. So us being a light unto nations, that's our obligation. So we have to learn, we have to treat others with respect, all these different things we have to do in all these obligations. That's 100% true, but obviously we're lacking something very strong over here because, no pun intended, we're low man in the totem pole, right? Even though you tell me, Clinton's daughter, she married a Jew, you got Trump's grandkids, grandkids are Jewish, you got a son-in-law that's Jewish, okay. So in the higher echelons of society, intermarrying with the Jews, not so bad, right? I don't know, tell Bush Sr. that, he probably disagree, but okay. Right? So the anti-Semites will say, these kids will never marry Jews and will hate Jews and all that. Good. But, that being said, there's a major fundamental point here. If we're not doing what we should be doing properly, right? Even though the Torah says, and it's clear, that we are going to be a light into the nations, when we are truly a light unto the nations, non-Jews don't have to come looking for us. Right? Let's say better. We don't have to go looking for them because they're going to be running after us. Right? That's talking about the Messianic era, right? Where non-Jews are going to come out of the woodwork like we see today, and they want to learn. So I would say if we were holding where we should be, doing everything that we should be, and not doing things by rote, which is akin to spiritual death, then what would I say? Then I would say it'd be so easy. The non-Jews be able to find us all over the place. It takes time. Right? It takes effort. That's because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. But on top of that, it's not necessarily our obligation. And it wouldn't be our obligation because we wouldn't have to do anything. Right? If we were doing what we were supposed to do at a much higher level, than what we're doing now, even though we're a very weak generation, that doesn't really matter, right? That doesn't really matter because the non-Jews are going to come running. So even though, there are a lot of non-Jews out there looking, searching, etc., we're not upholding our end of the bargain, right? So regardless, in a certain sense, of what my Rebbe said, the answer could be, right, if we were really, truly a light into the nations, you wouldn't even be asking the question. Because more people would be doing what you want to do. But since we are not doing what we're supposed to do, it's a lot more difficult. But it makes it a lot easier. You go on to YouTube, you go on to other things, you go to Facebook, or more people going to Parler, or even though it's been taken down, and other things, okay, it's a lot easier to find. And it would be a heck of a lot more easier to find if we would do what we're supposed to do, right? That wouldn't even be an issue, right? So you'll say, well, if we were staying, second part of the question, if we were staying, in our own ghettos, yeah, the Torah would be so strong, and it would permeate spiritually out there. Yeah, people would come running if they, if they so desire. It wouldn't be very hard to find at all. So therefore, I wouldn't even have to come on to any of this and say, oh, why isn't it my obligation to go out there? That wouldn't be an issue, right? Well, they'd come running, right? They wouldn't even have any question where to go. They'd find it easily, right? But this is obviously something that's been prophesized, right? Well, well before that you're gonna have all these non-Jews, coming out of idolatry, and wanting this information. When is that gonna be in the Messianic era, right? And again, even in the Messianic era, does not mean in any way, shape, or form we're gonna be the height where we need to be. Where are we gonna be at that height, after the fact? Up until that point, we're gonna get beaten down more and more and more and more, right, etc. And then there's going to be this whole thing, this whole big war, and whoever's gonna survive will survive. But at the end of the day, this is the era we're living in. So I would answer, even without anything else, we need to be better. If we would need to be better, you wouldn't even ask the question. So go home. You wouldn't even ask that question, right? Because we're not upholding what we need to do, right? But that would be. That was not bad. 59 minutes, right? That wouldn't be so bad, to answer, two types of questions in the same thing. But I could go for another 40 minutes, but you won't let me. So
yeah, not today anyway.
My name isn't Singer. I understand.
Not today
anyway. I understand,
right.
But we'll leave it at that.
That sounds like a plan. That you did a good job. A lot of answered questions for sure. I'm sure the show probably provoked other questions as well, but it's okay. At least
probably tick some people off.
The ball is rolling. That's what's important. So
That's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. Yes, sir. All right. Well, Rabbi, thank you for your time. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Very important. Turn on the notification bell also. Otherwise, you won't actually get notified. And if you're not getting notified, keep an eye on my Facebook page. I do try to put posts up before shows. Also been getting in the habit of putting up a little post on YouTube in the community area of the chat. Is that what you call it? The community posting? They have a section called Community.
Come on, I want to play my guitar, start singing Kumbaya.
They have a part of that YouTube channel that actually acts like Facebook, where you can post comments and people can comment underneath it. So anyway, I try to put it there as well. So anyway, hope you're getting them. And again, appreciate everybody. Rabbi, thank you for your time, and we'll see you same time, same place, Hashem willing. Thanks. Take care, everybody. Peace.